Hi everybody, this is Kate. Welcome. I am going to be reviewing the Coyote Iris glaze today. Iris is a purple Celadon style glaze, so it's translucent, or it should be translucent. Dinnerware safe, lead free, of course, non-toxic, which is always nice. And this one says to apply 2 or 3 coats, alternating stroke directions, or dip or pour 1 coat. So it's the interesting thing about Coyote that they say that they have manufactured their glazes so that you can use them in any of the 3 ways. You can brush it, you can dip it, you can pour it. So we'll put that to the test today. Apologies for the gloves. If you watched the video on the Spectrum floating turquoise, which is actually drying right over here because I'm doing both videos on the same day, you'll know that it's winter and my hands are in rough shape. So I'm trying to protect them from all the washing and the water and the drying out so that I can dry them out when I throw pots. Oh, and for those of you who watched my top 10 pottery tools video, I was telling the truth when I said that I use this canvas light for everything. Right now it is serving as video lighting. So the reason that I'm trying this glaze, there's a very specific reason, which is that I have a color combination that I actually, ironically enough, think of as the Iris. And it is Amaco's Mulberry Celadon with Coyote Amethyst and a little splash of pearl white on top. I love Amaco. Mulberry is a fantastic glaze. Their Celadons are really easy to work with, really consistent. They are also on the more expensive side. So, it's always good to check out what else is out there and see if maybe this Coyote Glaze Iris will do the trick for a little bit less cost. Plus, I can buy it in large quantities of dipping, which I would really like to do. And you can buy the Amaco Celadons in a dipping glaze, but only in the 10-pound pail. You can buy them in large quantities, which is interesting. I feel like Amaco is kind of limiting its reach by not offering its glazes in the larger dipping versions, and the ones they do have in dipping versions are, on the higher end. I will say that Amaco's products are generally, certainly with the Celadons, they are generally super consistent. So I am only testing Iris on white clay. And there's a very specific reason for that, which is that Celadons generally don't really look great on dark clays anyway, because they're translucent. That dark clay color kind of takes over the Celadon, and it just looks like kind of a murky, clear glaze. And so I don't use my Celadons on dark clay. So I'm going to do a little vase, and this one, I'm going to put the Amethyst on it. Actually, I might do that on all 3 of them, now that I think about it. Do I want just a plain purple pot? Not really. Okay, so Iris on the bottom, Amethyst on the top, Iris inside, and then a little band of pearl white where the 2 colors meet, and a band of pearl white at the top. And I'll probably do that for all 3 of them because that is how I'm going to use the glaze. And we will have some bare areas where we can see, like I'll leave the outside of this one just with the Iris so that we can see what it does on the texture. Do we pour on the inside? I think we do. Coyote says we can. And let's just grab a little stir stick because my Coyote Amethyst bottles, oh yeah, there we go, hard pan quite badly. And this, I can feel a chunk in the bottom there. So this is one of the disadvantages to Coyote that I have found. Like, you can't see it, but there's a big, so there's the top of the chunk. And there's the bottom of the pot. So there's a big chunk of hard panned glaze down there. And this is one of the issues with Coyote, that their stuff really does well. And again, I've only ever used the Amethyst, but you know, this is a Celadon and it's doing the same thing. So hard panning is an issue, and it is a pain in the butt. Like I say, I have ordered the dipping version of Amethyst, quite a lot of it, because I like it and it's super expensive, and the more you buy of it, the less it costs per pint or cup or milliliter or however you want to measure it. So I'm really hoping the dipping version doesn't do that. All right, so I spent some time digging that up, and then I was exhausted. So I went and I had a coffee and did some work on the computer, and now I'm back. Some new gloves. Okay, so I think I have everything dug up on the bottom here, but just to make sure, I'm going to use my milk frother and I'm going to mix it up. Milk frother is good for relatively fluid glazes like this one. If it's a thick glaze, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't have enough power, I guess. Basically, anything that's heavier than the consistency of milk, it doesn't really work. Which, now that I think about it, makes sense. Kind of mesmerizing, isn't it? I don't know if it's still a thing, but for a while there was this like slow video movement where people would watch, maybe it was a COVID thing. People would watch like just hours of video, you know, a camera pointed at the ocean and just watch the ocean, or watch people throw pots at regular speed, which is super, super slow and not at all like what you see on YouTube now. Anyway, I wonder if there's a market for a slow YouTube of glaze mixing. Maybe not. This says apply 2 to 3 coats. So if I can remember this, I'm going to do 2 coats on one and 3 coats on the other 2, because my guess is it needs 3 coats. Okay. It's pretty watery, hey? Okay. I'm going to pour, actually. So we'll get a good cross section of what works and what doesn't. I'm going to pour the inside of this one. Why? I don't know. It was in the middle. Ooh, yeah, that is some watery glaze. I'm not going to rotate this pot as I pour it out. Learned my lesson. Okay, so there's one poured on the inside. And then this one, I will do three coats on the inside and 2 coats on the outside. And I'm doing it that way because you see the inside of the bowl more often and you see the outside of the bowl less often. So if it turns out splotchy, it'll be less irritating. And this one I'm going to pour inside, but I'm going to do that once I've kind of brushed on a little bit because it's harder to pour with a full, what's this called? Pint? Is it a pint? I don't even know what a pint is, other than you drink it. But not this. Don't drink this. The only time I hear a reference to pints is in relationship with beer. So there you go. This is drying super, super fast, which is different from Amaco's Celadons, which have, I think, an additive in them that makes them a little more easily brushed Doesn't dry quite as quickly. So that would be one of the compromises that Coyote made when they were deciding that they wanted to try and make something that could be brushed and poured and dipped. I can see this being an issue here because it's kind of glooping up before I can even brush it on. Okay. Did I say 2 on the outside? So it's really going to show brush marks, I expect. It's my prediction, my hypothesis. We're going to see a lot of brush strokes here. It's simply not staying damp long enough to do any smoothing over. Yeah, why did I go all the way up to the top if I know that I'm putting amethyst over it? That's a great question. Because I forgot, is the answer. I have concerns about this as a brush on glaze. I don't really think this is going to work very well because it's drying so fast. But we'll see. Okay. Poured inside, 1 coat outside, 1 coat in and out on that. And I'm going to remember to only go halfway down on this guy because I'm going to put the amethyst on the top. Well, maybe a little more than halfway because I'm low on amethyst. One on the inside, and I said I was going to do 3 coats of this on the inside and 2 coats on the outside. And I'm not worrying about the top because it's going to have amethyst on it. This is a really difficult glaze to brush. And I really don't think it's going to turn out smooth. I need to get the brush loaded up so that I can get enough on here before it dries. This is wild. Okay. It's also all dried, so I don't know where I started. I think maybe I need to do this section again. It looks like it's got 2 layers on. So I'm looking here, and I can see that there's a layer here and then a layer underneath. So I'm going to stop and we'll see. So the outside of this, for better or for worse, is done. I think for worse, but you're going to have to stay tuned to see the results. The inside, I'm going to put 1 more layer on. And this has 1 layer on. Where did I start and stop? I don't know. I don't know, you guys. So definitely, okay, I'm gonna put my thumb there. See, now this time I can actually tell because I did go one way and now I'm going a different way. Okay, I'll relax. This one definitely is a dipping glaze, not a brushing glaze. I really am just kind of tapping off the drips off of the brush and leaving as much as I possibly can on there. All right, and I don't need to worry about the top because we're putting Amethyst on there. I'll put 3 on this die. Okay. 2 on everything. It's already dry, so 3rd coat on the inside of this. So typically with Celadons, spend some time, especially for the last 2 layers, kind of finessing it a little bit before it dries, just to make sure that you don't see any brush strokes. You're gonna see all the brush strokes on this one. Okay, so that's coat 3. Some of the spectrum glazes are a lot like this as well. When I've used pearl white on its own, it does kind of do that. Not a big deal with a floating glaze, but with a Celadon style, I think it's going to be an issue. Okay, so that's the 3rd. This one ready for a 3rd? God, they're all drying super, super fast. It is fascinating to me how different the preferences of different potters can be. Thinking back to that discussion around the brushes, but also I've seen discussions about, that's just 2, right? I think. Yeah, that's just 2. I have seen discussions about, like, how to make plates, for example. There was somebody out there proclaiming insistently to everybody that they needed to stop using a rolling pin to make plates because it was causing cracking. Now, I don't make plates, so I actually have no opinion on this, but there were a number of other people who vehemently disagreed and said that they'd been using the rolling pin method for years and it worked great for them. And I think it just, comes down to differences in clay and technique and all that stuff. But it is a really good reminder to all of us, I think, not to speak in absolutes, right? What works for you may not work for somebody else. And I have seen a lot of people very insistent about some opinions that are not backed up by science in terms of food safety and that kind of stuff. So I try very, very hard not to do that. So that's three on the outside, 3 on the inside. I think we're done. Okay. I try very, very hard not to speak in absolutes. And so if you ever hear me say, oh, you need to get this, just take that as enthusiasm and know that I do not in any way, shape, or form mean that as a directive. So if you like makeup brushes, use makeup brushes. That's awesome. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to use a rolling pin to flatten your plates, cool, go for it. If using a rolling pin doesn't work for you, then don't do it. But I guess when we're sharing information, we have a responsibility to be clear about the context of what we're talking about and what we're advising. And that's one of the reasons that I show the full process of the glazing in these videos, because often the results that we get from glazes are so dependent on how you apply the glaze. What kind of brush do you use? Do you brush in different directions, or do you do it all in the same direction? How many layers do you do? How long do you let it dry in between? Like, there's just so many variables. So by seeing the full process, my hope is that you get enough information to be able to decide for yourself whether what I'm doing is going to translate for you. So I hope that is what everybody gets out of these glaze reviews. Oh, why did I do that? I need to pour in the inside of this. All right. No. Gloves are all wet. That's what I get for pontificating instead of paying attention to what I'm doing. All right. Okay, now we're done. For reals. Okay. Amethyst. Onto which pearl white has dripped. I have been madly getting ready for Christmas markets, and so the place is just a disaster, and there's a glaze load in right now, and glaze is everywhere. Anyway. Now this is super, super thick. And I actually, the last time I used it, which was yesterday or the day before, I added some water to it. It's already thickened up. So this, for example, would not be a good candidate for the milk frother. Now, as you can see, I do not have much left. We might end up just doing pearl white on one of these bowls. And it is kind of difficult to mix when there's not very much of it. See how much smoother that one goes on? It still dries pretty quickly, but I have some time to smooth it out before it completely dries up. Which is funny because this glaze, it doesn't matter if I smooth it out or not. It actually looks really good when it's unevenly applied. So there you go. And I do need 3 coats of the amethyst. It doesn't look very good with just 2 coats. It doesn't do its magical thing. This one I might not use the pearl white. I think maybe I'll just do the amethyst over the iris on this one and see what happens. The pearl white I use mostly as a flux because it gets the amethyst to run a little bit, but it also does bring out some other colors in the amethyst glaze. It kind of brings out some blues, which are quite pretty, but I'm curious to see how amethyst does just on its own. So that's what we'll do here. I'm going to glaze both of these 3 times before I decide whether or not to put amethyst on that one, because I'm not convinced that I've got enough here. I should have enough. Yeah. It's kind of cracking there. It's interesting. Why am I glazing this way? Because I'm deciding as I go how far down it's gonna go. Nothing like a plan. Plans are overrated. It's not true. When I'm glazing, I like to leave myself some freedom. I actually do love a good plan. I am a planner at heart. My day job is in communications and marketing. I've been doing that for a very long time. And if you don't have a plan, you are doomed to failure. It doesn't always have to be a written down plan, but you at least have to have one in your head. It's your free communication lesson of the day. What do you guys think? Would you be interested in a series of videos where I talk about communications and marketing and some tips for potters? It's something that I have a lot of experience in. I've been doing it for more years than I care to admit to. And yeah, I mean, that could be an interesting series of videos to talk about some of the communications and marketing best practices and some of the stuff that I have seen and learned and done in my day job that potters could take and apply to their businesses, like branding, that kind of thing. I don't know. Let me know. Do you think that would be useful to you or not so much? I feel like I'm going to have to let these guys dry a little bit. Look, this one is cracking a bit. So yeah, I'm going to let that dry for a while. And I am going to put the cover back on this guy. This is what Sarah was talking about when she talked about these fan brushes that you have to like squeeze the paint out of them or the glaze because they hold so much. She's not wrong. You definitely do. Okay, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to come back. I will probably do the last coat off camera. How much glaze do you really want to see? I will do, no, you know what? I am going to come back and put it on camera because I'll do the pearl white as well. And like I say, I want you to see how I apply it so you can decide if that's something that makes sense for you. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, I'm back a little while later without gloves. Hold on. So this is interesting. It's been maybe an hour and I've come back to find this. So maybe even though it looked dry, the glazes just weren't quite dried enough. So I'm going to try just kind of smushing that back on. And, oh, or not. So it hasn't adhered to the mulberry or the iris underneath. That's interesting. Okay, so it's just not sticking. So I'm gonna have to come back and I'm gonna let this dry even more. And then I will, see, sometimes you can just rub it and it'll kind of stick itself back on. Fills in the little cracks so that you don't get crawling. And typically I've had good luck with that. It's the first time I've had this happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave these probably overnight, and I'll come back to them tomorrow just to make sure they're super, super dry before I move on. And then I'll have to patch this with a little more amethyst, and kind of tempted just to leave that in the bottom. Some little amethyst confetti. What do you think? Should I do it? Big one's not very confetti-like. What do you think? I think I might. Okay, so done glazing, and here's what we've done. We have the iris on the base of all of these pots. We have 3 layers of amethyst on each of the pots, and then 2 layers or 2 bands of pearl white on the inside and on the outside of these 2 pots, and along the midsection and at the top of this pot. Now, after I did the pearl white, it occurred to me that I think I was supposed to leave one of these without pearl white to see if the amethyst would move on its own on the iris. And this is the problem with, stopping in the middle for a week or 2 in between glazing sessions. But anyway, this will give us a nice test on 3 different pieces of what this combination looks like. So we're going to put these in the kiln and see what a cone 6 firing does. Okay, Coyote Iris versus Amaco Mulberry Celadon. Interesting. So overall, I would say that the color is very close between the 2 of them. The Mulberry Celadon is a warmer purple than the Coyote Iris, which is, at least for me, not a big deal. It's a pretty subtle difference you wouldn't notice unless they were side by side. The Coyote Iris does allow the amethyst to run much more, so it's clearly not as stiff of a glaze, which in a way is a good thing, because if you remember the problems we had with application, that doesn't seem to have caused too much of an issue in terms of how the glaze looks in the end. So it is melted and flowed fairly well. But the downside is that amethyst really does take over the whole pot. So for the application that I'm looking to use it for, I don't think this is the right type of Celadon for me. I think I need that really stiff Celadon, which the Amaco Celadon definitely is. However, it's a really pretty purple glaze, so I'm not disappointed to have bought it at all. I can absolutely see uses for the Coyote Iris, and it's a very pretty glaze. It's not quite going to fit the ticket for what I had in mind. Would I buy it again if I needed a purple Celadon? Well, the hard panning is an issue, not gonna lie. That was a lot of work to get a glaze to be usable. So I think that in and of itself would make me lean towards Amaco. The Amaco costs more, but man, you're saving me a lot of work, especially if I need to do that every time I go to use the glaze. And then, you know, for my needs, I was looking for the really stiff Celadon that doesn't move at all, and that's what the Amaco gives me. And the Coyote is much more fluid Celadon. And I mean, you know, one of the things that I don't like about that, because you can say, well, you just do less at the top, right? Well, if you remember, there was only a tiny little line of it up here at the top. And so it's run all the way down here. And I've lost that beautiful amethyst look, right? I've got this blue tone, which is what typically comes with the amethyst plus the pearl white, but I've lost what I love about the amethyst glaze. So if I was just looking for a straight up purple Celadon to use, you know, other than the hard panning, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this Coyote glaze. It's a solid choice. See what I did there? Solid, hard pan. It really depends what you're after. I'm curious to know whether or not you've used the Coyote Celadons. If you have any experience or tips or expertise to share, please pop those down in the comments, because I think it's wonderful that we can all learn from each other. And this is the first time I've used one of their Celadons. I'd be interested in hearing from people who have more experience with the Celadons. But for me, I think the hard panning makes it a no. Not when there are other alternatives that do basically the same job. The Amethyst, I am prepared to put up with the hard panning because this is a beautiful glaze and I haven't found anything even remotely like it elsewhere. But for a basic purple Celadon, not so much. So that's it. That is the result of the Coyote Iris versus Amaco Mulberry Celadon Showdown. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.